For the last 4 years, the dominant storyline in all of wrestling has been that of the Bloodline. In fact, you can make a solid argument that it's this angle which was most responsible for WWE having its biggest creative resurgence since the early 2000s. Of course, all good things have to come to an end eventually though, and if recent developments are any sign of where things are going, it looks like the stable might be on its way out once and for all, at least in the form that we currently know it. After all, with Roman Reigns seemingly gone for the foreseeable future, Jimmy Uso now on outs with the group again, and new additions such as Tama Tonga and the up-and-coming Jacob Fatu changing things up in a major way, we may have to get used to a whole new bloodline going forward. But before we get into that, we really should get everyone up to date on the story so far. If you're one of the half dozen or so wrestling fans who isn't already familiar with the recent exploits of the Anoa'i family, that is. Basically, it all started back in August of 2020, when following a brief hiatus he took in order to take care of his health during lockdown, Roman Reigns returned to action in a big way. Yes, this was when Reigns went from being everyone's least favourite babyface to one of the sickest heels going, the Tribal Chief. As after turning heel and winning the Universal title at August 30th's Payback, you start acting more like a mob boss than the smiling, happy-go-lucky, suffering succotash spouting kind of guy that he'd been before. Well, maybe it was because now realising how fragile life was, he wanted to make sure his family's legacy was secure. And the only way that he knew how to do that was to rule with an iron fist. So this was why, over the next few months, he'd do everything that he could to bring his cousins Jimmy and Jey Uso under his heel and make sure they always acknowledged their tribal chief. And that worked out so well that by the summer of 2022, not only would they be unified WWE Tag Team Champions, but Roman himself would be undisputed WWE Universal Champion after beating Brock Lesnar for the honour at WrestleMania 38. Then of course there was the addition of Sami Zayn into the group as the honorarius. The point the whole angle went from being great to being an all-time classic, as it was impossible to not fall in love with this goofy little French Canadian and his constant attempts to please the head of the table. And as if that wasn't enough, it was also here that Solo Sikoa debuted as the group's enforcer and made the Bloodline more powerful than ever. Really, at this point then, you could have made a solid argument that the Bloodline was the most powerful stable WWE had ever seen, and maybe the most powerful the entire wrestling world had seen since the days of the NWO. Even when Sami Zayn finally saw the light and left the group at the 2023 Royal Rumble, it didn't do much to slow down their momentum, as by then, they were carrying the company into a whole new era of prosperity. But as we mentioned earlier, all good things have to come to an end eventually, no matter how good they are. And while Roman retained his title against Cody Rhodes in the main event of Night 2 of WrestleMania 39, the night before the first dominoes fell, when the Usos lost their unified tag team titles to the duo of Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. Yes, that's where things started to buckle for both the Bloodline and their stranglehold over the company, as in the months after, Jey and Jimmy Uso would abandon the faction, though in Jimmy's case, he would eventually return. So when Roman finally lost his belt to Cody in the rematch of the century at WrestleMania 40, then it felt like the killing blow for the group who had been so all-powerful not long before that. But is it really the end? Or is it just a case of us reaching the next phase of things? That's hard to say right now, and it's probably something that we'll have to judge retrospectively. What we can say for sure though, is that there are definitely a lot of changes happening with the Bloodline, and there's going to be even more changes coming in the near future. Changes that'll probably completely alter the landscape of all we thought we once knew. After all, as we saw on Raw after WrestleMania 40, The Rock's going to be gone from TV for an extended period of time, presumably to film his new movie The Smashing Machine. And given how big of a part of the Bloodline angle he's been in the last few months, that's going to leave a massive void in his absence. Of course, this wouldn't be so bad if the head of the table was sticking around, but as we also know, following his loss to Cody Rhodes, it looks like he's going to be gone for the immediate future too. Though in his case, it isn't to film a movie. No, this is just the regular schedule he works now. Arrive, monologue, spear, and leave for several months. So because the leader of the faction is MIA, and because the final boss, the real leader of the faction, is gone, it means that the Bloodline has never been more at risk of either collapsing in on itself, or just coming across as irrelevant to fans. Should this have been expected though? Maybe. After all, every great group has its time. Even the NWO couldn't go on forever, and the Bullet Club stopped feeling cool not long after the Elite left. However, these recent developments don't necessarily confirm the ongoing saga of the Anoa'i family is dead quite yet, because there are things that happened on the SmackDown after WrestleMania which gave us a degree of hope. Sure, it might have been this episode which saw Jimmy Uso be kicked out of the group, but he was instantly replaced by a debuting Tama Tonga. And with Tama having a degree of legitimacy, which comes from working with New Japan Pro Wrestling for so many years, and with him being the real-life son of the world's most terrifying man, Haku, there's a chance that he could help to give the whole thing a second wind, or a third wind. Actually, it might be a fourth wind at this point. This angle really has lasted a long time, hasn't it? Not that it matters, because whatever stage of the group we're at right now, there might still be a long future left with it, if WWE play their cards right. In fact, with Solo now seemingly taking over as the new leader, this could be very similar to what happened in 1998, when Shawn Michaels had to retire, and Triple H was left with no other option but to rebuild D-Generation X in his own image. This was able to give a whole second life to the faction in the end, so who's to say the same thing won't happen here? After all, it's seemingly been confirmed at this point that Jacob Fatu, the black sheep of the Anoa'i family, is on his way to WWE too, and the most obvious place for him to land once he joins the roster would be as the newest member of this Solo Sikoa-led bloodline. But of course, that still doesn't solve the problem of star power though, as neither Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, or Solo Sikoa are exactly main eventers the way things stand now. So, there's always a danger that the whole thing could end up feeling mid-card, a far cry from the main event force the Bloodline has been up until now. But while this is a worry for the short term, if that trio can keep things afloat for long enough, then this should hopefully be enough to carry the storyline through until Roman Reigns inevitably returns, possibly as a babyface, and possibly now engaged in battle with his younger cousin over who the real head of the table is. And another wrinkle which could be explored at that point could be where Paul Heyman's allegiances lie, as while he has up to now been nothing but dedicated to his tribal chief, he certainly has a history of hitching his wagon to a younger and more promising talent should the situation arise. It's not like there isn't plenty of examples of him doing this. He even threw Brock Lesnar aside in 2022 because he saw more value in being the wise man for Reigns. So really, while the Bloodline might look like they're about to hit a valley following the temporary loss of its two biggest stars, there's still a lot of story material to mine out of the whole thing going forward. We might just have to wait a while for things to really pick up again, possibly around SummerSlam time. And while this is happening, we might even get treated to the silver lining of the Usos reuniting over on Raw. Because despite main event Jey Uso making something out of himself as a single star over the last year, even the most passionate of WWE fans would have to admit that Jimmy has flopped quite a lot without his brother by his side. If they're put back together though, this could solve that problem, all while also giving the tag team division a bit of a boost again. Because as we all know, if there's any division in the WWE which never gets enough love, it's that one. In fact, for the most part, it's about as exciting as a Karrion Kross match, and as underwhelming as the footage of CM Punk and Jack Perry at Wembley. And let's not forget about the real end game here, the big WrestleMania singles match between The Rock and Roman Reigns. Even if the Bloodline does have a dip in quality over the next few months, there's absolutely no way WWE are going to pull the plug on it before they get this bout signed. So buckle up if you're a Bloodline fan, because we've still got a long way to go, and if you're one of the people who think it's jumped the shark already, well, we feel for you, because it's probably going to dominate WWE TV for some time to come. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, click here for another, and if you want to become a dog yourself, check the links in the description.